Welcome to the Effective Business Hub podcast, where we dive into the minds behind today's most innovative startups and business leaders transforming operations through technology and strategy. Today's guest is Adam Kimmel, founder of ASK Consulting Solutions, a growth-focused consultancy helping technical and engineering-driven companies scale smarter, streamline operations, and communicate their value in a competitive market. With a deep engineering background and passion for bridge technical precision with business strategy, Adam brings a unique lens to modern growth. Adam, welcome to the show, and it's great to have you.
Thanks so much, Tom. Great to be here.
So, Adam, we always start out kind of with the old origin question of what first pulled you into doing consulting services, and what's kept you passionate about moving from engineering into actually leadership and consulting.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, I was a calculator head for most of my life, so I sat in a cube designing heat exchangers and HVAC systems. So I was an R&D principal engineer for years. And I had kind of a decision point about 5 years ago. I thought, well, am I going to pursue the fellow engineer route and be, the deep technical expert, or something else? And what I realized was when I would develop a new product, nobody really understood it. And so if they don't understand it, they're not going to buy it. So what's the value of all this work I've done over the last 3 years? So I started writing product descriptions for patent attorneys to help them figure out what the heck they should try to claim. And then the business team would ask me, well, can you write a summary for the executive leadership team that would have to invest in capital for this equipment? And so I started to do writing describing these complicated technical processes and products. And so that really led me into content writing. And I thought, all right, well, here's my off-ramp. And so I started doing content marketing consulting because I figured if it was good enough for my company, it might be good enough for other companies. So I started doing content strategy and writing to help these companies tell their story. And then I realized when I would do discovery work that the business fundamentals were a mess. So I said, well, this is an even bigger opportunity. So I started doing business development and growth consulting. And that's really where I started this, develop the point of view that I currently have, and figured out that we need to understand why we exist. Why would anybody buy anything from us short of best product, best people? That was a lot of what I would hear for why you. And I thought, I think we need to do a little bit better than that, sharpen up the differentiation and value prop, and then go from there.
So when you first launched ASK in its infancy, what did the operations look like? What early tools or systems did you rely on that you've since outgrown or evolved? Yeah. And what is your definition of efficiency really evolved into?
Efficiency is one of the most important principles to me, and everything I've done is with that in mind. How do I get better, faster, smarter about every single step along this process? What's my rate limiting step, to speak in manufacturing terms, and how do I reduce that takt time? All the things, right? In the early days, it was mainly content strategy, and it was all manual. So I was doing this discovery work myself, taking notes myself on paper or on a Word doc. There weren't these AI note takers and things that would just summarize it, wrap it up, and present it to you in a nice package after the call. So the only AI I was using in those days was Grammarly, which I would write an article and I would ask Grammarly to help me edit it. And sure enough, it would find a few phrasing issues and things, but nowhere near the capability of what the tools are today. But that was it. So it wasn't very efficient, and my revenue was dependent on writing a word because I would charge on a per word basis or something like this. So moving to strategy let me get more strategic and tactical, and I kind of helped go upstream. But all of that was still manual. So the interviewing tools and some of the insights that using the AI as thought partners for, here's an idea I have, give me 5 other ways to reframe this, just to help tighten the screws, has been really, really helpful. It just minimizes iterations and things. So that's how I've kind of used the modern tools to help with efficiency in terms of what I'm doing now, given that growth is so nebulous. Growth can mean anything, right? It can mean pipeline, it can mean product, it can mean profit. How do you want to grow, and what are those metrics? And so the AI tools can help organize the stack a little bit more in terms of, let's do this first, this next, and that.
So strategy is a tool that you use, or how has that evolved?
I use strategy as a way to get those disciplines that are typically siloed aligned. So I have a 4-phase process completely based on plan, do, check, act. So plan is the audit phase, where I interview product stakeholders, operations, sales, marketing. These disciplines are typically siloed, right? Product has legacy points of view. They're out here developing something. Sales is transactional, trying to hit their numbers. And marketing is somewhere in the middle, trying to be strategic without really a seat at the table in either camp, sales or product in a lot of cases. So I view marketing as the hub to tie product, marketing, and sales together to get that message and strategic narrative aligned. And so strategy is the vehicle to get that alignment between those three disciplines where positioning and differentiation are born. So that's kind of my point of view. The internal alignment is the reason for such generic messaging, and it's almost impossible to stand out if those groups aren't talking to each other.
How do you currently manage client scheduling and project delivery? And what slows you down the most? Is it usually your internal capacity? In other words, there's just not enough Adam? Or is it client responsiveness? And then what have you learned about balancing that structure with client flexibility?
I like to work with a few clients in a deep way. I'm not a volume type of person. I'm more of a fractional partner. So I like to work with about 5 to 6 clients by itself. I need to be able to get in there deep. And if there's too many, I can't get as deep as I need to get. So the limitation is almost entirely on the client end of things. They want my help. I need their help to let me help them, and getting access to SMEs has been the biggest challenge. So in all of my processes, I've developed ways to minimize the active minutes that SME has to put in while still getting me the information I need from their brains to let me do the tasks and the steps that I need to do. So it's been internal SME alignment. I mean, capacity does show up a little bit, but I think through efficiency and through processes, that can be worked through. So I want the limitation to be on the client side. So I'm pushing them, and they hire me to push them, basically. So here's the timeline we need to hit. If we don't, here's what happens. So there's an element of project management that comes along with that too. I've structured things so that the client becomes the driver of the schedule, and I manage that for them.
So when you're doing a project, then how do you actually track your profitability and execution? Do you use dashboards of KPIs or an ROI, or do you and how has your pricing model evolved from when you first started to where you are today?
Oh, it's evolved a lot. I'll answer the second question first, is because when I was a writer, I just said, okay, well, here's my fee per word. That's about one of the hourly is probably worse than that because it penalizes you for being efficient, right? If I work fast, I get paid less. That's a misaligned outcome, right, for the client and for me. On a per word basis, then I was motivated to make the things as long as possible. And so then I started saying, all right, well, here maybe it'll be a 1,200 to 1,800 word article, and here's the fee. It'll be $1,500 for that, plus or minus 10% on the word count, or whatever it ends up being. So it ended up being project-based, and so now I do almost exclusively project-based. So in my process, there's 4 steps. The initial audit phase is a project-based, and a lot of clients, if they don't want to do the full program to start, we run the first phase by itself as a discrete project, and then roll that into the full phases 2 to 4 to the rest of the program, which is also project-based for phase 1, 2, and 3. And then for phase 4, that's the ongoing expansion phase, or the active in the PDCA type nomenclature. That's where I can do ongoing coaching or content strategy, execution. So if they want support with that, that's an ongoing retainer based. So it's kind of a combination of project and retainer for the 4 phases.
So this is a question I ask especially the smaller operations. If you had one admin task that you could just kill that just drives you crazy, what would that be today in your small business?
It probably business development. In terms of the first types of reach outs, there's a lot of people doing this, but not a lot doing it effectively. Many are using AI to try to help this. These sort of spray and pray methods of sweeping, different lists of people and content. But I mean, our customer and our target client is going to sniff that out right away. Engineers know engineers, and they know who isn't an engineer, and they know who hasn't really spent a day in their shoes, and to get advice from somebody who has no idea what they're dealing with is a flawed. That's just going to not work for anyone. And so having that expertise and that ability to speak fluent engineering is a different language and a different mindset, but I speak it, not unlike Klingon, I guess, or something like this, like some different language. But getting that, and then getting the ability to get those calls and get the meat out of the calls. Engineers are by definition kind of skeptical, especially of marketing and people coming in as a consultant. I remember seeing consultants and sitting as a principal engineer thinking, how much are we paying them and what are they actually doing for us? So proving that out during discovery calls is important. And so for me, yes, if I could clone myself, that would make things easier. But the ability to speak to those engineers at their level in the language they want to pull the meat out of their minds and points of view, that's the limitation.
What does a normal sales cycle look like for you? Usually from initial contact where you're actually creating a project or an outcome. Is that usually like a 2 month, 3 month, 6 month? How does that usually evolve for you?
I found that it depends pretty strongly on the size of the client. So I target small to mid-size, more in the mid-size to medium large-ish, maybe 50 to 500 million in revenue, no more than about 250 employees. That's kind of the sweet spot I've found for people that have done things ad hoc for a long time. They've had some success and they're ready to transition and to grow. That's where this process fits almost perfectly. And the process is one where when they either reach out via LinkedIn. I put a lot of LinkedIn content out there. I do some outbound BD, and then I do referral based. So there's 3 touch points. So as far as how they come in, I always try to find out, well, which of these channels worked and brought you to me. And then, but from initial contact, there's usually a discovery call that happens within a week or 2. And then from there, if they're serious, then a proposal happens about a week later. So if motivated to do this, then the sales cycle is maybe a month or 2 based on availability, travel, all the other distractions that go on. If they're not quite, but they're interested, I get many people like, this is resonating with me. This is exactly where we are. We do not have this alignment. Our engineers know a ton and we can't market because we don't understand what our buyers think. Then I have to get the right people in the room and getting that attention. So I'll have an internal champion that's a manager or director level, but the decision maker may be a VP. And so winning over that champion to then go internally and do that sales pitch to get the VP decision maker on the call can take a little bit longer. So this is a long answer to say it can be on the short end of about a month or 2, up to maybe 4 or 5 months, if they're really a good fit. If it's just this is interesting, but I'm not really in the market, I don't really count those sales cycles because they could go on for years. That's just a nurture relationship type of thing that happens. But the ones that are really looking to do it, probably 2 to 6 months.
Okay. So where do you see your biggest bottlenecks right now as far as being able to expand your business?
Well, business development, I think that's always going to be the bottleneck, right? If your processes are humming along, things are tightened up, then it's a matter of, well, how could I get the rest of the clients? No one probably feels like they've got enough growth at any point. So the bottleneck just becomes more in-market buyers, awareness, and then having the budget to allocate to this kind of strategic growth.
So being a smaller operation, are you feeling any pressure from the larger consulting companies that are, really pushing the AI business development? How do you differentiate ASK?
Yeah. I think my biggest competition is really Deloitte and McKinsey. I've worked at companies that have employed both of those firms. They come in and, the executive team, I'll be honest, they give the outcome that they want the consultant to come up with and basically put that outcome on their letterhead. That's really what they want, right? They want to have an independent view of their perspective, the executives, fed back to the board or the leadership team. So they come in for 6 figures, high ticket, and give a strategy deck of a few hundred slides. Who implements that? Who understands it? Who explains it to literally anybody? Nobody. They drop it and walk. So where I'm different is, one, I've got deep subject matter expertise in, I've worked in hydrogen for the first part of my career, so clean tech. I've worked in automotive and HVAC, in addition to industrial manufacturing. I was a product development engineer. I did the design work. I did the FEA analysis. I oversaw the CAD designs and did the GD&T and all that stuff. That expertise doesn't just come around. You have to work in the role to do that. So that deep engineering expertise is where I really have found a value. But then in addition, that makes the strategies more tactical. I help them execute. So I don't drop a 500 slide deck on their desk. I say, all right, let's work together. I develop the strategies. I give them tools to go and test it in the market, or I can help them do that. Optimize it with that market feedback. So we're tuned now to what the market expects, and we're aligned and positioned. And then I help them execute. So that strategy with the engineering expertise infused plus execution, at a price that's a fraction of what McKinsey or Deloitte is going to charge anybody like that. That's really where I see the biggest value. And people are just almost thirsty for this because that model just doesn't work anymore. And we're seeing that, right? Those large consulting firms are laying off and struggling with growth right now for that reason. Nobody wants strategy on its own. I mean, there aren't people just waiting around for strategy decks to work on. They need help executing and leadership and training. So that's where I see it. So the strategy plus execution and and the fact that it's a fraction of the cost also helps. And it's just because it's me, they don't get a junior level person that I'm farming the work to. They're getting the expertise, and it usually takes way less time because there's just less people involved. So it's me working with the decision-making team. So it's better, faster, and cheaper. Good, fast, and cheap. That used to be, you couldn't have all three legs of the iron triangle, but the model, does lend itself to that strategy plus execution.
So given the fact that you were mentioning that some of your owners are still kind of stuck in that 2010, 11 area, and you're really having to kind of sell the differentiation of the services, how have you seen their expectations and of their deliverables really change over the last 5 years?
So their expectations of my deliverables to them?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
They don't seem to have many expectations. They know there's a problem. And they hear complaints from their team that, growth, what about, there's no new business, or our products aren't there. We're getting beat on product. A lot of times what I hear is, we've got a way better product or solution, but we're just losing because no one knows about us. And we're losing to a huge logo that everyone knows. And if there's, if the customer or client thinks, all right, well, the technology is roughly the same, I'm going to go with the name I know. That's been the biggest issue. So the expectation is, how do we really highlight our right to win? That's never been more important than it is now. So really positioning and differentiation. It's not something I feel like many older executives have had to think too much about because business has just come in, especially in kind of that mid-tier manufacturing. They have their niche. They sit in there. It's nice and comfy. When somebody's out of what they do, they just order more, and it's just cyclical. Then it's about price and delivery, right? It's the execution. That's different now. And so the expectations of the deliverables are, how can you help us earn our right to win and expand our right to win and be different than this company that continues to frustrate us? We should never lose anything to them. Solving that piece is really what they want. And they don't know how to get it, but they know they need it, and they've heard they need it. And so that's what they're looking for.
So what do you use for your internal tools, for your internal toolbox to help you create all these deliverables? Do you have a set of custom tools you built, or a set of industry tools that you're developing, or how do you run your internal operations?
Well, I mean, internally I use project management software. So if I were doing like an execution retainer phase, I would just use like an Asana or a CRM board like this to run the BD pipeline for the client. Pipeline is really what they need. They need more on the front end to kind of work deals through. They're not going to win every one. I built a calculator to figure out, based on the revenue growth you need, your hit rate, all of the different metrics that we track in the discovery process. How many calls do you need to be making per week, per team member to hit that revenue goal based on your close rates and efficiency numbers. So I built that out, and I built a tool to help predict with a change, how would that be affected? So how could we get the efficiency of those calls higher based on some of the feedback that we hear from the discovery call? So I take that and do it. And I use AI tools for that. Perplexity is one of my favorites that I use. I build custom models for, I'll build like a customer thought partner, and I'll run those different scenarios, if this, then that, to help with recommendations. And then I analyze the numbers that they share with me just in a spreadsheet-based model. And I kind of say, all right, well, here's sort of what the numbers say. Does this feel right to you based on your experience, to the client team? And then we align there. So there isn't a lot of really high-tech things, but it's the way I use the data that's been really the shift. So there's a positioning canvas, and it's all about how we compare different facets with what the competitors are doing. There's SWOT analyses. This is a table stake thing that I think everyone should do when they're trying to learn how they're different. And so many of these are spreadsheet based, but then there's AI infusions into each of those to help kind of optimize that on the back end.
So given some of the nature of your projects, if you can share a situation or two where when you've had maybe things that have completely broken down and you were able to actually rescue it and rebuild it, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a recent client engagement I was with, and they were experiencing this revenue erosion that I talked about. Business was coming in the door for many years, and then all of a sudden it started to go down and down. And it was an awareness problem. So they were an established brand. Everyone knew them. And there was these up and comers that were motivated and they were taking business away. And the issue was that they really couldn't articulate their positioning. They had no clue why anybody would pick them. They just did because they always did. When I worked with them, it was all about, let's be very, very honest with this. I mean, open the window fully and go, here's where we're better. Here's where they're better. We don't love our right to win with this segment versus this competitor. We do in this segment. And so putting that kind of really honest view to it, the discovery process is very safe space type stuff. There's no bad answer, but you have to be honest. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. No one's judging this. It's just critical to be honest. And what they figured out was their segmentation was wrong. I mean, they were working in a market that had a higher revenue, but that revenue stream was going away. There was a whole renewable stream that was growing at a double-digit growth rate, and the numbers were different, but you need to be spending time where the growth is happening, not where the growth is eroding. So you put some dedicated resource to the legacy stuff, but you've got to be pushing the high growth area. And sure enough, when they made that shift, the positioning was different. All of a sudden, more people started coming inbound through the marketing efforts we did. And then the business development efforts and conversations got much better because they knew the problems that these customers were having. They could anticipate the pain points that were coming down the pike that the clients didn't even realize. And they spoke in the language that they needed to hear. So it was a much easier conversation, much shorter sales cycle when they positioned themselves properly.
So what's the toughest business decision you've had to make in the last year?
In the last year, wow. Probably, do I scale my business with full-time partners or do I pursue strategic partnerships? It's sort of the make versus buy question, right? If you buy, I guess if you make by hiring internally, the cost is potentially lower in the short term, but you absorb some mouths to feed, and there's a pull to have to get that ongoing work. So what I did was I had a partner that I had been working with, and I just needed to sunset that effort and work on strategic partnerships only. So I would look at my own offers. I saw a few areas, graphics being one. I'm not a graphics person. I can calculate all day. I'm a good writer. I can't draw nothing. So I needed, if I wrote a pillar article for somebody and they wanted it to be converted into an ebook, I needed someone to help me do that. So I would then source a preferred referral. I call it a preferral. The marketer takes over sometimes, but this is somebody who has this skill set that I can say, all right, I'm going to white label that. This is a partner I trust, and then we can sell each other services in terms of our own fractional work. So the shift was, I'm not going to build an ASK army. It's going to be me plus strategic fractional disciplines that I need to round out the skill set.
So given those strategic partnerships, what does ASK look like in 3 years? What new capabilities or services do you think you will add? What technology will reshape how you deliver? What's that look like?
Yeah, I really can see a software component to what I do. And I never thought I would ever say that. Software engineering is very different than I'm a chemical and mechanical engineer. This is different. This is like, not all engineers are created equal, right? But the process is becoming, I like to customize the approach for each client engagement I do, but the steps are similar and the intake is similar. So how can I streamline that in a way that makes it take less time and be easier for the client? And so what I can envision is, I do a lot of front-end work, bringing in a co-founder, kind of an ops person, to build those tools and those, I don't know if they're AI necessarily, but whatever those streamlined software tools would be, that then becomes almost instantaneous, where we would get the insights from the client discovery and then feed that back into the business development strategy, the go-to-market. And then the other one I would add is product management. So I see a lot of people, the issue with silo is that there's not really a product management discipline in a lot of these companies. They may have a role, but a lot of times that role is focused on supply chain. So in addition to some of the growth stuff and streamlining that on the discovery and pipeline side, product management consulting is a really high area that I see an opportunity. And with my background as a product development engineer, I've got a nice right to win there. I can look at a product roadmap and go, oh, based on this market data, the go-to-market strategy that we just worked through on the first phase, you need to sunset these 3 SKUs because they're not profitable, and you need to add these ones because your competitor's kicking your butt with these. So that's another offer that I've started to kind of test in the market to see if there's an appetite, and lo and behold, there's a pretty big appetite for that, and it goes nicely with that growth arm on the front end.
How do you filter out just the wonderful little shiny things that somebody slaps that AI sticker on that everybody's always jumping for now? Myself, I'm not a huge only proponent of AI. I think it's just another business tool. I still like the term business intelligence because you've still got to apply some intelligence to the AI. But how do you filter out some of those shiny objects from the things that you're like, okay, yeah, that could actually help me forward here?
That's where the expertise comes in, honestly, and why I like working with companies that I've worked in the field from the same industries. I'm able to look at an AI generated thing from somebody that didn't know how to prompt it and go, yeah, that's not anything. There's ChatGPT doing its work and somebody trying to use that only. The prompts and what you ask AI to help you with is where the magic is, and that's where the humans are so valuable. And I think they'll be even more valuable because of some of that noise and some of that. People are going to become inherently skeptical. Maybe they already are now, right? And I think they'll be even more skeptical of this. So having that expertise and saying, all right, well, here's what I'm thinking. Like, I use it to test points of view. Here's an idea that I have based on some customer data. Do research and come up with a narrative around this or a counter argument to this, or how would somebody raise, what are 10 objections I could hear back from this point of view? That's a great way to test it out because it's usually specific enough and technical enough that there isn't a lot of fluff on the internet about that. So when the tools come back, that tells you pretty clearly whether or not you're going down the right path. Or it may highlight something that, oh, yikes, I didn't even think of it that way. Better pivot to something else. It's a way to, I think I made the analogy a little while ago, but just tightening the screws. I've got this philosophy based on all this intake data I've got. Am I thinking of it the right way? AI can help you just refine that and make sure it's crisp, versus just, ask it one line and have it spit something at you. That's not going to work.
So if you had to give advice to somebody else getting started in the consulting business,
yeah,
what would be a piece of advice that you would give somebody starting out there consulting?
It's similar advice that I give clients. What is your right to win? If you can't think of one, what are some other things or tools or skills that you can add to augment people that are out there in the industry that are kind of known commodities or name brands that you can do? You've got to be able to have a way to get market intelligence and be a source of news. I think one of the biggest benefits that external clients can give is to help internal teams that talk themselves into these echo chambered points of view, bring market intelligence into those conversations. Give them news that they didn't know. Be a source of regulatory information. Here's a regulation in your space that just changed. Do you know about it? Do you know what are you doing about it? Here's what some other companies I talk to are doing in a non-proprietary way, using public, available things. So be that source of news. Understand how to talk to customers and then develop a business development arm to know how to find them and where to find them. I mean, that's really what many companies are struggling with right now, is just where to find customers. There's no business without that. So you've got to be able to do that for yourself. Otherwise, all the website refinements and all the white papers and things you write, no one's going to read them. So you need a pipeline.
You can build the greatest mousetrap, but if you can't tell people about it,
right,
you're never going to
win. No one
win.
knows it exists. They're not. It's like a tree falling in the woods, right? That's a similar. Yeah. If no one knows it fell or whatever, who knows if it made a noise? Yeah, it's the same.
Well, Adam, I tell you what, this has been a great conversation. Shameless plug time. Tell people where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so my website, I'm just recently refreshing it after I just said don't just start with the website refresh. So I did all this work and now I'm ready to do the website. Website should be the last thing you refresh. I'll just offer that piece of advice, not the first. But it's askconsultingsolutions.com. And then I'm all over LinkedIn, Adam-S-Kimmel, Kimmel. And I am actually not related to Jimmy. So I get that question a lot of times. And some people even say we look alike. I don't think we do, but definitely no relation.
Really appreciate you being on the show today. This has been a wonderful conversation. This will be posted up soon on our podcast everywhere. I'm Tom Dimmer with the Effective Business Hub podcast. Until next time, stay innovative, stay effective, and keep building. Thanks again, Adam.
Thanks so much.